Hello, I thought I'd just pop in to remind you that there's some useful tips in the description area below, as well as some links. One of the links is for the playlist for the whole series of Pallet Spice Rack. If you've seen previous videos and you've enjoyed what you've seen, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button over there. In the meantime, I really hope you enjoy the video that's coming up. What I thought I'd do with this imperfection is to cut a triangle out of it to get rid of all this mess and replace it with a decent piece of wood with similar grain pattern. If you can see, that's pretty similar and would match. And hopefully by the time that wedge has been glued in, that I've taken from here, it'll be pretty difficult to see that that imperfection was ever there. That's the idea anyway. Let's have a go. I'll orientate this line so that it's vertical. My hand-eye coordination is going to work better on that line if I keep that line vertical. I've drawn a line at 90 degrees to that top surface so that I know the wedge is going to have vertical sides. And repeat on the other side. And finally, my trusty bench hook. Good. And I've got the wedge that I'm looking for. I'm going to save this sawdust. We'll discover why later. Now what we've got to do is to orientate the wood grain to the wood grain that exists on the piece I want to repair. There are two quite dark annular rings here that would match those two quite nicely, so I'll try and line those up. And we'll see what happens. So I'm going to draw a line along here and draw a line along here. And then I can use my square to mark those lines vertically along that end. Let's pop this in the Workmate with the line I'm going to cut vertical, and remembering I'm going to saw on the waist side of the line, i.e. the bit with the holes in. Using my finger as a guide, getting that exactly on that line. I want to stop just at that apex there. Making sure my blade is level with the top of the Workmate. I don't want to have to clean that apex up. So I'm going to make sure I do go down as far as I need to. Again, sawing on the waist side of the line. Checking that I'm still on the line. Putting a lot of pressure with my finger to keep that saw running down the line, because it's going to want to jump out when it hits that hole. So easy, because I don't want it to break off. Good. And that looks nice and clean. Let's see how that wedge fits in there. Pretty good. I can feel that it's proud underneath, proud on top, and we'll let that set. The glue's now dried, and I'll come back and plane that in a minute. But in the meantime, we've got to think about what we're going to do with these remaining holes in the two shelves that have got them in. And what I'm going to do is to plug them with some wood from a barbecue skewer. It's roughly the right size for those holes. It'll fit in there with a bit of a push. And then we're going to fill the rest of it in with sawdust and glue. Next, I need to make some slightly longer than 14mm lengths of barbecue skewer. And the first thing we'll do is to glue those into the holes. Plenty of glue in the hole, and we can push that in after it. Just make sure it's sticking out both sides. Yep. And same the other side, they're fine. And then lastly, we'll mix up some glue and sawdust. An old credit card, or in my case a club card, makes quite a good spreader. It'll also give us a surface that we can mix the sawdust and glue on. Start off with a bit of glue, and then we'll add the sawdust. Right, see how we go. The beauty of putting that piece of barbecue skewer in is that it gives us sort of a key point to allow the rest of the filler to stick to it. So when we come to plane it, we're not just going to rip out all the sawdust and glue that we put in there. Well, that's the idea anyway. Let's see what happens when we do it. Make sure that all the gaps are filled. You're pushing that fillet into the hole. You don't want it to be below the surface of the wood. On the other hand, you don't want to leave too much on there to get rid of afterwards, so we'll scrape off the rest of what we don't need, nip over the other side and see what we're up to there. Looks pretty good, and we'll do the next one and we'll see what that looks like. I'll leave it for about an hour before I come back to it, and we'll carefully bring that back to the surface. The glue's dried now, and what I'm going to do is to glass paper it rather than plane it. If I was going to plane it, it's possible that I'd lift off that very thin layer of glue, and in a way I'd rather sand it down. So I'm pressing down onto the filler rather than trying to lift it up. I'm going to use a glass paper and block. Whenever you use glass paper, you always wrap it around a flat surface, and in my case that's going to be a cork block. This is 120 grit glass paper, and to make it economical, what I do is to tear it, not cut it. If you try cutting it, you're just going to take the edge off whatever tool you're using to cut it with. I'm going to tear it into 6 equal bits. And then tear that into 3. And these pieces, if I fold up about 15mm on one side and crease it, wrap it around my block. It's got a rounded side and a sharp side. On the sharp side I'm going to use. Fold it like that, get a decent crease in it. That'll be just about the right size to approach this. I'm going to start off on the high bits. Again, I'm getting that lovely smell of that wood. Nearly there. So that's got rid of all the glue and I'm down to my surface. And now I bring back the shine to that surface by using a finer glass paper, 320 grit. And you should see the colour of that grain darkening up, showing that I've got finer scratches suitable for a decent surface. And there we are. I'm very happy. No imperfections in the surface. If you look closely you can see what's been going on with the holes, but basically that's restored that wood to where it should be. I'll turn it over, do the other side. Quite important that you do watch that you have got rid of all that filler, that you really have just where the depressions were and not a splodge over the top of it. It might not show at this stage, but when you come to varnish it, it'll suddenly leap out at you that you haven't gotten down far enough. Temptation is to leave it early, but you mustn't do that. Yes, I am being quite extravagant with my glass paper, but experience has told me that the breath in your body's worth more than the price of cheap glass paper. Now, though I've got quite a lot of filler left in there, I think I'm down to as far as I can go because the hole was quite deep before I started. So I just finished that off with the finer glass paper, and that will be me finished on that piece. Lastly, I've got this piece to do with the wedge in it, and that's now dried. And this I can take a plane to because I'll be pushing it in this direction and it'll be getting deeper into the wood, not likely to come out. I just checked my plane hasn't got too heavy a set on it. Let's try that, it feels okay. Yep, feels ideal. Before long, I'm down to my surface. Not bad, bit of a gap. Let's see if the other side's any better. Pretty good. Quite happy with that. That's appreciably better than it was with the two holes and the gap in the end. Now I've just got to clean that end up. I've set my wood nice and low in the vise, and I'm going to work from the outside towards the middle and then from this side towards the middle, starting on the high bit. Coming. And we'll come around this way, so taking out the vise. And we're practically there. Settle plane on the end. And that is pretty good. Nice straight edge. So here we are. 4 really good usable components for our spice rack. These are going to be the top and bottom and 2 shelves. And it came from wood that was like this and worse. So I'm quite happy. And as I said last time, behind your back, I've done 2 additional bits that are 375 long. So we're ready now to do some really nice carpentry on some really nice bits of wood.